Hi, I'm Yulia, and this is the News Brief, and today we're going to do a little rundown of everything that happened this week up until today, and the most important things for Ukraine. And then we're going to discuss it together in the comments, so you don't have to suffer alone, and I don't have to suffer alone. So please leave your questions, suggestions, constructive criticism, anything you have on your mind down below, and I'll make sure to read of it and get back to you. Let's go. Well, yesterday was a horrible night for Ukraine. There was a massive attack on two Ukrainian cities that don't normally get attacked because they're quite far from the range of Russian weapons. One of the cities was Lviv, where I am from, and according to my family members, there were 5 explosions that were heard very, very loudly. There was a lot more flying onto Lviv, obviously, but the impact was heard from 5 separate explosions. We can't tell you if those were hits or if those were air defense working because there's not that much information available as of right now. There was a street hit in Lviv that was hit priorly. It's actually quite close to where my grandmother lives, near the central railway station, and she said that they couldn't sleep all night, obviously, because there was just so much going on. And the first explosion, she wasn't really sure if it was an explosion because she looked at the weather forecast and there was supposed to be thunder that night. But then she quickly realized it was obviously the explosion, and she had to shelter in her basement with her dogs, who were all incredibly frightened. There was quite a bit of destruction in Lviv. There was, so far, we know about 1 known death and quite a few injuries, but thankfully not much more than that as of the moment. On the same night yesterday, Russian missiles also struck the plant of an American company, Flex, in Mukachevo, Zakarpattia region. For your information, Mukachevo is very close to the Hungarian border, and it is very deep into the Carpathian Mountains, into the territory of Ukraine. Normally, Russia doesn't strike anything in that area because A, it's far away, and B, it's way too close for comfort to Hungary. 15 people were injured, and the civilian production of electronics, which actually included fitness trackers and coffee machines and such, so not really wartime electronics, was destroyed. The attack occurred just 30 kilometers from the Hungarian border. Earlier, the Kyiv office of Boeing had also come under fire. Ukrainian authorities called the strike an act of terror against civilians. President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that Russia deliberately used several cruise missiles against an American-owned facility. This comes against the backdrop of Donald Trump's earlier remarks that American business in Ukraine is the best guarantee of security. So if you wanted to have an answer as to whether Putin wants peace and you are still somehow unsure, here is your answer. He doesn't want peace. He wants to show power. He wants to show how much he doesn't care. And every single time that America is involved in negotiations of anything, he makes sure to spit in the face to the Americans and the American authorities and show them with all of his actions how much he doesn't care for American involvement, for what the United States can and cannot do, and for the guarantees that the United States puts forth. Like, please don't be blindsided. It's a metaphor for how much he's scared of the United States and how seriously he takes the United States. The issue of security guarantees for Ukraine remains the center of international discussions. Following a meeting in Alaska, Donald Trump announced that Vladimir Putin had agreed for Ukraine to be provided guarantees that are so powerful they resemble NATO's Article 5, but without joining the alliance. President Zelensky called it a positive signal, but stressed that Kyiv needs guarantees based on the Israeli model and ruled out the possibility of China's participation, which is something that Putin wanted. Putin wanted China to be one of the guarantors, which is so freaking funny and ludicrous because China is, well, technically their official government stance is neutral, but in reality they have been helping Russia this entire time. There is all the proof of that. So that's a no-no. He also expressed readiness to meet with Putin in a neutral country because Putin had invited Zelensky to meet with him in Moscow. Yes, right. Let's send Zelensky to the Lion's Den, to the place where all of Putin's political adversaries have been murdered. Yeah, that sounds really reasonable. Sending Zelensky to Moscow to talk to Putin. Never gonna happen. European states are discussing the creation of a coalition of the willing to support Ukraine. France, Germany, and the United Kingdom have expressed willingness to join. French President Emmanuel Macron emphasized the need to combine Ukraine's military with deterrence forces on land, sea, and in the air. The EU announced a 500 billion Euro package in defense funding. NATO welcomed Trump's statements but stressed the need for concrete details. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said such guarantees are unrealistic, attempting to discredit the idea. I mean, there is a lot going on around that. So first of all, Macron has been the only European leader with a very, very staunch stance against the idea that Ukraine can never join NATO. Staunch stance in terms of the security guarantees that should be provided to Ukraine. It shouldn't be like the Budapest Memorandum. We already had that, and we're not going to sign anything like that. These need to be real security guarantees with real troops, with real support, and with real outlined responses if the crisis strikes, and what these responses are going to look like, and who's going to provide them, and in what quantity. The other part of this is, of course, Zelensky is not going to Moscow. Also, we're already seeing how much these negotiations with Putin and how much this White House meeting between Trump and European leaders and Zelensky was just a show and just for show, because it hasn't even been 3 days. And Trump is already going back on the things and the promises that he has verbally made about these security guarantees and about what his involvement and the United States involvement will be in Ukraine. The idea was that the United States would be one of the most powerful countries that would join these security guarantees. And that's likely the only way that Ukraine is going to sign this document, is if the United States has outlined security guarantees and responses of what they're going to do if Ukraine is attacked. Now, Trump went back on that promise and said that, well, actually, the United States is only going to have a minor role in these security guarantees, and it's going to be minuscule, literally. And Europe is going to have to take the brunt. And he's trying to pose it as in like, oh, but I'm just trying to make Europe be more responsible. But in reality, that's not what it is. Because the signatories to the Budapest Memorandum were the United States, and we gave up our nukes because the United States president at the time has quite literally forced us to. So this is a complete different story than Europe not defending itself. This is a story where the United States was directly involved in promising Ukraine its territorial integrity in exchange for giving up nukes, and now isn't pulling its part. And if the United States is not signatory to these guarantees and doesn't provide them, then there is really no point in signing this document, and these security guarantees are useless. So Trump going back on them already tells you how little was achieved in this meeting and how little has resulted from these negotiations with Putin, which, may I remind you, nothing changed in Russia's demands since a month ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago. It's still the same asinine demands that they were in 2022. Also, on the night of August 21st, which is the same night as Ukraine was hit, Ukrainian drones attacked the Novoshakhtinsk oil refinery in Russia's Rostov region. 5 explosions and a large fire were recorded, confirmed by NASA satellite images. This was the 5th strike on the facility since the start of the full-scale invasion. The plant produces fuel oil, diesel, marine and heating fuels. A series of attacks on Russian refineries has triggered a fuel crisis. Gasoline prices have reached record highs. Many regions are experiencing shortages and long lines are forming at gas stations. Aw, sad. In occupied Crimea, most gas stations have run out of fuel. Rationing has been introduced with coupons, and kilometer-long queues have been recorded. The Kremlin admits that the shortages could last for months. Ukraine has stated that strikes will continue until the war ends. According to the Associated Press, Ukraine has begun producing FP5-class Flamingo missiles, currently 1 per day, with plans to scale up to 7 per day by October. So Ukraine is producing its own long-range weapons in order to take out Russia's main sources of income to fund this war, and Russia's main warehouses and main storage facilities for the weapons that they use in this war. Notice the difference, or how Justin Bieber said in pop culture, clock the difference. Ukraine is striking Russia's production facilities that are directly responsible for killing civilians and conducting this war. Well, Russia is striking a Fitbit factory. Russia is striking civilian buildings. Russia is striking high-rise buildings with apartment complexes. Russia is striking schools. Russia is striking colleges, libraries, universities, hospitals. That's the difference. So when you ask yourself, when is peace going to come? That's when we defeat Russia, and that's when the world stops trying to convince Ukraine to agree to a really crappy deal and starts pressuring Russia instead. And that's all I have for you for today. If you enjoyed this brief, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel and turn on all of your notifications. Send this video to a friend, give it a like, and of course, leave me your thoughts, questions, and suggestions down below. Thank you. See you next time.